welcome to our panel on the shared settlement for Appchains. So as blockchain ecosystem evolves, shared settlement solutions are becoming more and more crucial, addressing the limitation of our existing settlement solutions. So today we've joined by a group of leaders from Omni Network, Rome Protocol, and Movement Labs and Initia. So my name is Michelle. I'm from Beijing Ventures. Today they're going to share with us, and we can start with a brief introduction with each panelist. So Austin, you can start.
Hello, everybody. I'm Austin. I'm a co-founder of Omni Network. And so Omni's blockchain built to unite all rollups. It's basically an interoperability solution purpose-built for the Ethereum ecosystem. And so the way we secure these messages that get passed around rollups is through restaking. So we can actually build an interoperability solution secured by Ethereum itself. I don't do anything with Appchains specifically, but obviously interoperability is very relevant to Appchains and like shared settlement layers. So I'll kind of be giving the perspective of like a relevant infrastructure provider, but yep, appreciate you all being here. I'll do my best to make it spicy. I like panels that get a little, testy, so yeah, I'll do my best with that.
Hello, I'm Anil, co-founder Rome Protocol. We are a shared sequencer on Solana. So we integrate rollups, Ethereum-based rollup, and execute transactions on Solana, provide DA on Solana. The thing that we bring for the rollups is interoperability between rollups, providing atomicity of the transaction, cross-rollup transaction, as well as cross-chain between Solana and Ethereum transaction, atomicity and interoperability. So that is the main thing that we are trying to bring for real-world application where you need atomicity between RWAs, KYCs, and payments, and you want to settle those as a single transaction without taking risk of one transaction failing.
Hey everyone, I'm Cooper, co-founder of Movement Labs. So what we're doing is we're taking the Move virtual machine, which has a lot of performance and security upgrades to Solidity. We modularize it, we're adding some zero-knowledge elements as well, and then we're plugging it into existing blockchains so that Move can be everywhere. So shared settlement is really dear to our hearts because that's one of the key pieces of infrastructure that enables navigating the cold start problem for novel smart contract development languages and other pieces of infrastructure. So kind of like what Austin said, Appchains have evolved from just being for applications to now being for pieces of infrastructure and even networks as well.
Hello, Hello, everyone. I'm Zon, Chief BDSM Officer at Initia, that stands for Business Development Strategy Marketing. Initia is building a network for interwoven rollups. We're holistically rebuilding how the multi-chain network should look and feel through a layer 1 orchestration layer and a layer 2 system that allows teams to build an EVM, MoveVM, and WASM VM, and ensuring they have everything they need provided out of the box.
All right, thank you everyone for the brief introduction. Let's start with the basic question. So what's really holding us back about the current or the existing settlement solutions? Why are we even thinking about going towards the shared settlement for Appchains?
Yeah, so I think the answer to this is very clear, and some of you might not like it, but Cosmos over the past 5 years really is a demonstration of like why we need this. Cosmos has been really the incubator of the whole Appchain thesis. But if you look at the landscape, there's very low liquidity, not that many users. If you've actually used it, it's quite difficult to actually use it. And so, we're now at a point where even the Ethereum ecosystem has acknowledged that okay, if we actually abstract out the execution environment, we can get these more customized environments where we can build really nice experiences, but still have all the users and all the liquidity in one place. So I think it's really more of kind of like a maturation of the design space at large. Cosmos has had this idea for a long time. They just haven't had the shared foundation of liquidities of like a liquidity base and shared user base. So yeah, really, I think it's just really downstream of this whole modular design paradigm that the space has entered. And I build specifically in the Ethereum ecosystem. it's super cool. You know, for a long time we've had one shared settlement layer, but now we're getting these like customized environments built on top of it, where you can build like hyper performant places for applications. So I mean, that's kind of like historical context. Like we haven't had shared settlement layers for a long time, but now we're like moving to a place where we have that, and so that allows us to have like shared users and liquidity, but it also allows us to be more customized in what we build.
Yeah, so adding to what Austin just said, I think when we are bringing application for real world use, we need chains that are specifically designing application that bring one aspect on a particular roll-up or a particular app chain. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, okay. So what we need to do is we need to provide settlement for an atomicity between these different roll-ups, different app chains, and it need to settle atomically. So shared settlement becomes kind of a single point where you are able to actually do your settlements, shared settlement, and bring that application to the end user. Without having the shared settlement, it becomes liquidity fragmented, and user are, or the application that are designed for the real world, they cannot be designed appropriately and without a proper use case.
Yeah, and so especially when you're building with novel technologies, they traditionally face a really difficult time onboarding their initial set of users, builders, and liquidity. And so that's something that as a Move builder was a pain point for me, where Move chains, they launched deep in the bear market. And so even if there was a lot of liquidity, it would still be difficult to ask users to have to bridge that over, to have to use brand new applications, download new infrastructure. If you're already paying for a subscription to Netflix, you're not going to want to subscribe to Disney Plus or Hulu or any of these other channels as well. And so being able to have shared settlement and these virtual machines even communicate with the same location where the existing user bases and liquidity bases are will help bootstrap any novel technologies significantly faster and in a much more organic way, assuming that it's even possible to incubate and launch something novel, completely isolated in the current blockchain market, given the saturation of how many L1s and L2s already exist.
Right, like Austin said, Cosmos was really the pioneer of this Appchain thesis, and we saw how the lack of shared settlement really led to a huge slew of fragmentation. I mean, the user experience on Cosmos is still goddamn awful, even with tools like Skip being pretty awesome these days. One of the biggest problems with them, though, is you have to bootstrap validator sets. For every Cosmos chain, you have your own validator set. You have to pay out in tokens to inflate the supply to pay for the security, and that's obviously not a great thing. On Ethereum, we've seen the rise of roll-ups that use the same settlement layer, and they've been able to scale quickly, but often they're met with huge fragmentation issues. How do you appropriately connect all these different roll-ups together? How do you ensure they have access to things like oracles and native USDC and CCTP access? Because you're appending these rollups to a legacy system. So by reapproaching this design space and rethinking how shared settlement should operate, things like the Initia layer 1 are really used as an orchestration layer. What they do is they arrange and they move data between rollups. They ensure there's seamless liquidity and fungibility across all of them, and they really empower these rollups to have everything that they need out of the box. So users and teams can simply focus on building the most powerful applications rather than dealing with infrastructure that they really don't care about, while also retaining all the value that they create since they're their own app chain.
Yes, shared settlement do break some critical barriers. So the next question is all on our mind, is the security question. So is the security for the shared settlement layers, and also especially in multi-chain environment. Can you talk about that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, gladly. So one really cool variable that we can toggle now is security in a number of different dimensions. So we have like new data availability layers, we have new settlement layers. We're really like pulling apart the foundational crypto infrastructure stack, and this gives app developers a lot of flexibility in how they want to build their applications. You know, like for example, I was just talking with the Alt-Layer team earlier today. They're hearing this from people who want to launch rollups on their platform, that they have different preferences on like whether they want to do EigenDA, Celestia DA, or Ethereum native data availability. Like we're moving to a stage in the cycle where like previously you either got like box A, B, or C, and now you really just like, this is the like ultimate conclusion of the modular thesis. You have to choose every single component. And so as an app developer, you can go do that all on your own, just have like a hyper customized environment to build for your specific use case. Or you know, you can work with different infrastructure providers, which kind of like package a nice bundle together so that you don't have to think about it. Security obviously is foundational to all this, but I think really opening up our minds to the idea of like different degrees of security, especially like on a temporal basis, like that like over time as things settle down to Ethereum L1, the security will improve. I think that's really like unbounded a lot of the design space. For a long time, people have been like, where are the apps? Where are the apps? And like, let's be real, like it's really hard to build useful applications when you have like multiple second block times and like it's super expensive to transact on them. So obviously we'll always be like top of mind as we're building these decentralized systems, but the flexibility in it I think is like the new like thing that we need to understand, like embrace as we're designing these apps.
Yeah, I think security in Appchains and rollup world is more important because we are looking at more cross-chain transaction, more interaction, interoperability between Appchains and rollups. So it becomes even more important when we are bridging assets across, we are doing Atomicity. So it is important to have trustless, non-custodial type of security for the cross-chain interoperable chains to coexist and provide that settlement, looking at like shared settlement, so we can extend that security and the atomicity to the transactions that are happening cross-chain or cross-rollup. So I think it is important to have the shared settlement layer where we are able to provide that kind of security.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that with shared settlement, you're able to extend the security of a primary or a base chain to the rollups or app chains on top of it. But additionally, there's a way for that to work the opposite direction as well, where particularly if you're looking at different virtual machines, such as move to Solidity, where Solidity you have a lot of vulnerabilities in the form of reentrancy attacks, other exploitations that are regularly used to drain protocols. Using shared settlement, you're able to actually plug in different, more performant, more secure virtual machines on top of that and create an environment such that the applications that exist on a given chain can upgrade their performance and upgrade their security without having to leave their base network or the umbrella of that base network, which also includes the infrastructure such as your wallets, your validators, and other common toolkits that are being used for development there. So shared settlement fits in really well with this modular thesis of being able to pick the best of every world and be able to hedge against any one single downside through this extensibility.
Yeah, I think from a security perspective, shared settlement layers are obviously beneficial because there's one layer that you have to sort of ensure is really secure, and then you can provide that security to all of these rollups. With new systems like EigenLayer, you're able to build AVSs really easily, and you can tap into the economic security of other networks that are already more mature and use those to secure these new rollups. And I think that's going to become very powerful. In the modular world, like Austin was talking about, there's hundreds of new layers that are being created that are specialized, whether that be on DA or execution or settlement. And oftentimes, a lot of these are pretty much fungible. Like, if you choose Celestia DA over Near DA over Avail DA, in most cases, your transaction cost is going to go down enough, and it's not really a choice that I think people should have to deal with. And that's why on Initia, we've made very pointed integration decisions with tools like this, so that these kind of systems just come out of the box. Layer 2s don't need to think about picking and choosing the right system for you, because most of the time they don't really care to do so.
Yeah, I think security is always the most important thing for users. And the key is to keep the balance between shared resources and security. So the next question is, so what exciting development do you see on the horizon for shared settlement layers?
The question was what's exciting and on the horizon, right? A ton of things. I mean, this panel's like a good example of that. Like, we're making a ton of innovations. So, like, this is a pretty new idea, and we're just bull market's like just around the corner, and so like excitement is here in regards to like people actually using this stuff again. There's been teams that have been building for the past like 2 years, and like now we're like moving into a stage of the cycle where like things are gonna get a little more entertaining again. Like we're already seeing some like pretty crazy user behavior. And I think this is very clearly just the beginning of this cycle. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of really interesting like foundational design paradigms that we've laid over the past 2 years here. Fundamentally coming down to really this like modular design thinking, like, which, let's be real, is just microservices. Like we kind of went through this transition already in Web 2 where we like used to ship software once a year, and then eventually we got to like once a quarter, and now it's really exciting. And now, all the big websites ship multiple updates every single day because they isolate the functional components of their websites and like their applications. That's what's happening in crypto. We're just like properly isolating functionality and responsibilities in these systems, and it gives everybody a bunch more like expressibility in the systems that they build. But at the same time, it allows us to move much faster. So I think the innovation cycle that we're already seeing and going to like continue to see is going to speed up quite substantially compared to previous cycles.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. What was the question?
What are you excited about?
Oh, yeah. So I think this extends what at Rome, I think we are excited about shared settlement is because you are able to take the use cases to a smaller chain where you can solve these real world problem, whether RWAs or different type of problems. You can solve them on a singular way, but at the end of the day, you can extend, you are an extension of the security that is provided with the shared settlement, and you are able to bring these use cases in a much more holistic way to the end user. And I see that is a way for us to extend and bring the blockchain application in the real world without branching out and solving these smaller problems. We are not able to solve the problems with a singular monolithic way, a particular chain solving every single problem. So different chains providing different functionality and then coming together and security extended by one shared settlement. I think that is the way I see forward for us to extend it to a more broader audience, bring in more user into our space.
Yeah, so settlement is just one piece of the blockchain stack, including consensus, execution, and data availability. And so we might be seeing some networks that are sharing settlement layers, but then looking very, very different in every other capacity. So to illustrate this, you have folks such as Eclipse, which are taking the Solana virtual machine and plugging it into Ethereum, thus combining those network effects. At Movement Labs, we're doing something similar with the Move virtual machine. And then when we're taking these ecosystems, in fact, over into a shared settlement layer, it's contributing significantly to the biodiversity as well of that base chain and that base layer. And so instead of having a bunch of different protocols that are all forks of each other, that also are having similar vulnerabilities rippling throughout the ecosystem, instead having protocols that are coming from Solana, coming from Move environments, coming from other chains, and then being able to communicate more effectively with each other, share users, share liquidity, share other network effects, I think is going to truly lead to a renaissance of blockchain development, especially with next generation virtual machines, such as SVM and with Move.
Yeah, I don't think this is particularly shared settlement, but something that I'm really excited about is simply seeing these new ecosystems launch, whether that be things like Appchain, Blast, Initia. I think the way that they've approached ecosystems is much different from the boomer networks that we've seen thus far. Instead of paying money, bringing in applications that already exist elsewhere to do the exact same thing on a new network, what we're seeing is these new ecosystems approaching this from a much more Web3 perspective, understanding that value creation is incredibly important, and taking the time to really work with novel, unique applications, ship them resources instead of paying money to teams like Pancake and Sushi to come launch on your chain. And we're going to see an incredible amount of social coordination, games, and just wealth creation from these applications and these new ecosystems that are going to really showcase the modular stacks as well as what everyone has been building for the past 2 years.
Yeah, I think everyone you talk about is very exciting and promising. So how do you guys solve the need for atomic composability?
Yep. Okay, cool. I said I was going to try to be spicy. Here's a spicy take. I don't think we need it. I don't think we need it for the most part. Like, we need composability for sure. These systems need to be able to communicate with one another. But like, think about everything you do on the internet today. Like, how much of what you do when you're in a single application needs to immediately, atomically, be reflected in some other application? Probably a vast majority of it does not. And like, we are going to get these systems to a point where they are going to be hyper performant and able to like be used in applications like that. And they don't need to be atomically composable. There are certain use cases, you know, like if I'm going to take out a flash loan and like do something somewhere, like yeah, sure, atomic composability is helpful in that sense. But like Omni, for example, was very intentionally designed to be asynchronous because that's the only way that we're going to get world scale with these systems. Like, if you force everything to be like put into a single pool where they have to align with one another, we're not going to be able to make it scale. Like, so that's our simple take. Is just that like you don't need it. There's a minority of use cases that you do, and it's like helpful. But a vast majority of what we are ultimately going to build, you don't need atomic composability for. You need composability. Doesn't need to be atomic. So that's our spicy take on this.
Yeah, I think I take a little bit opposite view to Austin. So I feel that atomic composability is very necessary when it comes to trustless, non-custodial type of transaction that we need to execute without having to take a lot of risk. If we look at our bridge between cross-chain bridges or any kind of arbitrage, you end up taking one kind of transaction and you don't want to take the risk, and you want to execute them both at once or not at all. So I think just in this example, we can see that, okay, I want to have my transaction atomically composed between two chains. And what does that mean, right? From what we are doing, what we are bringing is you can take two roll-up transaction and we can compose that as a single transaction and execute that as a single transaction, which transition the state of two roll-up at the same time. So when that transaction reverts, it would reverse on both the roll-up at once, right? It will not be, okay, you reverted on one roll-up and you are still executed on another roll-up. It is non-custodial, it is totally trustless, it is on-chain. So that is what means to us in terms of atomic composability. In terms of real-world use cases, the way we are seeing it is you have tokenization of the real world, right? You have services that are provided. You have KYC, that is your token as a KYC. You have a lending protocol. You need to compose a transaction where you have a KYC, you have a lending of an asset, and you have another token that you need for which you are taking that, against which you are taking that loan. And you want to execute that atomically in a single transaction.
Why is that? Like, why do I need to KYC and take out the loan at the same time?
Because you want to have that token. Somebody has a token about the KYC. So it is part of the same transaction as opposed to a separate transaction. It is on chain in a single transaction, your KYC token, your lending, where the asset that you are putting as a collateral, they are part of the single transaction. You do not need to go to two different chain or three different chain to
but like nobody's going to snipe me, right? Like if I'm just getting KYC'd and I take out a loan, like. So I think you have a point on the arbitrage one for sure. Yeah, atomic composability is super nice for that. Right. We see that between like sex-dex arbitrage today. It becomes like stat arb instead of like atomic arb. But when we're thinking about like a vast majority, like gaming, for example, like social, like Farcaster posts, like I don't think any of that needs to be atomic.
Sure, there are use cases where you don't need atomicity, but there are
just
use cases
spicy,
for which you need atomicity. All right.
Super, yeah. I think that composability is critical to the cohesion of chains, and to this vision of modularity in which we want to break down barriers. We want to create infrastructure that's going to encourage the scaling of network effects between different ecosystems and different technologies. And so from the composability, you kind of look at that both from a user as well as from a developer perspective, that as a dev, it should be as easy as possible to plug into different networks that are sharing that same settlement layer as yours, whether they're written in the same smart contract development language or virtual machine or not. And then additionally, from the user perspective, being able to interact with applications of different stacks and using different technologies without even necessarily knowing that they are doing that. So one example that I like to point to with regard to Move on Ethereum is that you can have your funds stored in Move smart contracts that could then be aggregating yield or could be entering into DeFi contracts in the Solidity-based settlement layer of Ethereum. And you as an end user might not even know that your assets are being safeguarded by the Move language. They have the same level of functionality as if they were on this base settlement layer, but instead being able to reap the network effects and the benefits of modular design.
I'd also like to throw my hat into Austin's ring and saying that I'm not sure I believe in atomic cross-chain composability. I think it's a cool idea, and we'll see the use cases eventually. Things like arbitrage, they make a lot of sense. But for the most part, things like IBC let you do asynchronous composability across various different blockchains with multiple different hops across tens of multiple VMs. And with atomic composability, it doesn't seem the most scalable. You have to understand the state that is everywhere to be able to do something on one rollup, react to it, and then do something back again. And because of that, I'm not exactly sure how it'll play out. I'm hoping that you will prove me wrong in the future, but for now, yeah, we'll see.
Thank you. I like the debating atmosphere on the stage. So we don't have enough time. The last question is, why should an app chain leverage a shared security or like a shared liquidity? Why not go sovereignty?
Cool. All right, this is a nice final question because I'm going to answer it the same way I answered the first question. Look at Cosmos. It is a terrible user experience to move over to Cosmos. The users and the money are scattered everywhere. And actually, I built the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm going to dunk on Ethereum too. Same thing's happening in Ethereum right now. Everything's fragmented and scattered all over the place. It takes forever to move from one platform to another. And so it's not only the shared settlement layer that you need beneath all this. The whole point of all this is that you can just move around easily. We're at this stage of development of the technology in this cycle where anytime you move from one platform to another, it's like if you were going to a website and you had to manually pick up the packets from one website and move it to another website, and that process took 15 minutes. We're just at a very rough UX state of the industry right now. But ultimately, this all comes back to can you just easily access users and capital? That's ultimately what it comes back to. All these different mechanisms and technology, infrastructure layers, are really to get us to a point where we can achieve that user experience without compromising on security. So to me, that's why this stuff all matters. You can see that we have the really powerful global network effects of Ethereum that's demonstrated itself over the past 7 years here. It's starting to degrade. We're starting to see that as rollups. I don't want to say Vampire, the main L1, but that's happening. The user experience is clearly degrading in comparison to something which is very integrated like Solana. And so this whole modular design paradigm is okay, let's unplug all this stuff together so that we can get an integrated UX like Solana has today with higher security properties and also greater scalability so that we can have multiple systems operating in parallel. That's what matters, users and capital.
Yeah, I think I'm with Austin on this one. The user experience has to be very integrated, very smooth, and for that we need unifying components that exist across the landscape which provide that functionality to compose the user experience that is needed so that user is not jumping from one place to another place. And I think having a shared settlement which is kind of take the risk away from doing one thing on one place and another place and providing the unifying user experience. I think that is something that we need to do.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Why start from 0 if you could start from 1? So that was a pain point that we faced as move builders, starting from nothing, having to bootstrap from 0. So being able to plug into networks like Ethereum, like Cosmos, like other places is huge for us.
Yeah. So Ethereum's pretty fragmented, like Austin said. Cosmos is damn fragmented. And then the modular systems are only going to take this to a whole new level. Imagine tens of DA layers times multiple execution environments times multiple settlement layers with 10 different interoperability solutions in between them. That's millions of permutations of new blockchains that are just going to ultimately affect the end user's experience. So shared settlement layers can really help solve a lot of these problems. One of the biggest things we focused on Initia, aside from the architecture stack, is rebuilding the entire product stack around this. So how does it actually look and feel moving between these different applications such that you don't even know that you're using maybe tens of different blockchains underneath? Ultimately, you're reaching levels of chain abstraction where you're just using applications. I think one thing that's extremely valuable, though, for ecosystems is having personalities. And that's how you grow communities, because often your community, given your chain's personality, is going to flourish around the ecosystem. But once Initia has thousands of interwoven rollups on top, I'm really excited to see this idea of chain abstraction take off, where you're just moving between applications, even though you're using tens of different infrastructure layers underneath. And that's what shared settlement can help you achieve.
Thank you everyone. It's a privilege to have the discussion of the shared settlement for Appchains. And thank you so much.